All right, people. Stocks by the numbers. Welcome back, and we have a potential stock situation here that could be in the crosshairs with President Trump. We could be seeing some movement. Obviously, technically coming to you late with the stock because you're seeing a 7% bump today. Markets were running, and of course, he recently re-mentioned the whole shipbuilding aspect of our defense system, so I figured I'd jump on and we'll look at this stock together. This is Huntington Ingalls Industries, symbol HII, listed here on the New York. This is a defense stock, 215.74 today on the close, up almost 15 points, 7.4% move on the day, up about almost another 2 points after hours. Now, Goldman came out, I believe it was Goldman. Yeah, Goldman came out, touted HII, increased their price target, and in my opinion, I actually agree with them. Not only are they probably going to get, potentially anyway, a bunch of contracts to build ships, but in general, overall, the business looks pretty solid. They pay you a dividend to own it. You're seeing steady growth over the years. And in my opinion, I actually think the stock is undervalued currently. And now today, again, we had a Goldman Sachs analyst come out, and big winner was Shipbuilder today. Yep, Huntington. Okay, Huntington stock rose 7%. Okay. Quote, we expect Navy shipbuilding to be a relatively high priority within the defense budget medium term and for Huntington to benefit. Medium term, my opinion, 6 to 12 months, right? You might start hearing about the money flowing into a company like HII. Even also recently, I know he mentions L3 Harris, which is a phenomenal company. And used to be Harris Communications, I believe, was the standalone stock and ended up merging back with L3. But these defense companies, they're just consistently getting these contracts. And I know Trump, like we always said, Trump likes strong military and he wants to, keep that funding secured and he wants to have a strong defense, strong military, just in case anything really pops off or something, right? So that's why the defense companies, we knew that Doge was going to potentially pull back some funding, but at the same time, we're getting updates that funding could potentially be coming back into these companies. So L3 Harris, again, HII, also General Dynamics, right? Lockheed Martin. General Dynamics, I mentioned, I think would be the standalone winner. I believe it's actually been performing very well too. We can do an update on that maybe sometime next week. But yeah, Goldman expecting Navy shipbuilding. Quote, a recent executive order appears to cement the administration's focus on domestic maritime labor, supply chains, and production, and there is the possibility for shipyard accountability and workforce support language to be implemented in the future that could drive margin upside for Huntington, right? So more potential business, more ships being built over the next 1 to 2 years if these executive orders and in general orders come in to HII. And now we could potentially be seeing higher margins over the next couple of years as well. And you can see this person raised their price target on Huntington from 145 to 234, which again, I know it jumped up today, but you're talking what, really only like 10-15% upside from where it was when this came out. And I think they're being conservative. I think we could potentially see high twos, even 300. Stock actually hit 299 and a half, I think, not too long ago. Along with upgrading Huntington, raise rating on L3 Harris Technology to buy from hold, lifting price target up from 198 to 263, right? So we can kind of see the potential top 2-3 players, right, in the defense space that may benefit the most out of this Trump administration, at least over the next like 12 to 24 months. So again, L3 Harris, Huntington HII, you got GD, General Dynamics. Quote, management has leaned into innovation and disruptive technology more than peers, and we believe the company is well positioned as the Pentagon shifts to commercial technology and business models. That was about L3 Harris. Booz Allen Hamilton lowered. But yeah, I just wanted to mention what they said, what Goldman said about HII. Let's check some news. Lockheed secures contract. Yep, that was today. May 1st, we got earnings conference call. But there were a bunch of other deals. Yeah, market chatter. Trump expected to sign executive order on revitalizing U.S. shipbuilding industry. And again, I know the stock recently pulled back, and we've bounced here with the markets. And today, of course, you get the news. So the stock is up, definitely 20-25%. It's up a big chunk from these recent lows. But in my opinion, I think there's more to go. And a name like this, again, technically growing fundamentals, even if you're not buying on the rumor, right, to sell on the news potentially of the order coming in. Again, technically on paper, you are buying a decent stock in the numbers, in my opinion anyway. GD wins contract, Lockheed secures contract. This is all in the last couple of days. Huntington, Hyundai Heavy Industries signed deal to support ship production. Huntington delivers first 2 Lionfish undersea vehicles to U.S. Navy. They also, we got a multi-year program here with the Navy as well. This came out. No, I'm sorry. Bear with me. Because I read all this and then I jumped on, so I'm getting my headlines mixed up here. Ingalls wins $133 million contract from National Guard. And this was, for training. Announced today that its Mission Technologies Division was awarded a $133 million contract by the U.S. Air National Guard to enhance the readiness and proficiency of flying units through live, virtual, and constructive training. Under the 10-year task order, HII will provide expertise and staffing for the execution of Distributed Mission Operations DMO events at the U.S. Air National Guard's Distributed Training Operations Center, DTOC. Located on the Des Moines Air National Guard Base. DTOC has 132nd, 90 simulation sites. Okay. Quote, incorporating live virtual constructive elements into training dramatically increases the level of realism for air units and enables them to enhance the critical skills needed to succeed in the face of global threats. In my opinion, they're ready. They're preparing for anything to pop off, whether it's the Middle East, whether it's China, anyone, anywhere. That's what I think is going on, personally. Again, seeing contracts like this coming in just to increase their readiness, their proficiency, right? We're talking about now, we got to get back to shipbuilding, build up our Navy again. So you can kind of see the writing on the wall here. Quote, our team is focused on the warfighter mission and is pleased to provide customized training solutions for our nation's citizen airmen and U.S. Marine Corps command and control units. HII provides high-value engineering solutions. Okay. Quote, we are pleased to expand our services for the DTOC as part of HII's ever-growing portfolio of U.S. Air Force aviation training programs. HII team will fully implement the Joint Simulation Bus, a software interface used by the DoD to modernize the DTOC's gateway connection. It will also use HII's DMO test tools recently made available to Air Force Life Cycle Management Center's Advanced Training Capabilities Program Office. Say that 10 times fast. We're going to be in Iowa. Okay. About HII. Okay, beautiful. But in my opinion, again, it just seems very consistent. And again, we had the Goldman update. We just bounced off the bottom. Trump mentioned shipbuilding, right, the last couple of days. So I'm sure a bunch of people jumped in. They're probably already up a little bit of a chunk. So again, coming potentially a little late. But we know that the big moves are going to come in if and when the actual orders come in. HII is awarded contract to develop high-energy laser weapon system for the U.S. Army. That was 3 weeks ago. Lockheed. Huntington, another Navy contract. 8 new stories? What? What's going on here? Okay, so I click on that and it brings me back down. Okay. Whatever. All right, so let's look at some of the numbers after looking at all that, right? We have a market cap of around $8.5 billion, which in my opinion, again, I'll get to it, I think it's undervalued. Dividend currently yielding about 2.7%. PE sitting at 14 and a third, earning almost $14 a share. Less than 39 million shares in the float. Again, float different from total shares outstanding. Float is just for us, the public. The beta, again, the beta overall volatility of a stock in relation to the overall volatility of the market, roughly 2/3 as volatile as the market with the beta sub 0.7. EPS has been a little light for the last 2 quarters in a row. Expecting a slight drop here below $3 EPS for Q1 25. But again, over the long run, you can see profits taking a little bit of a hit over the last couple of years, but the revenue, the contracts remain slow and steady. And that's what I always say, in my opinion, slow and steady wins the race. And also, over this growth, the stock has just kind of held its value. We'll get to the chart in a second. The stock has just kind of held its value for the years. It hasn't really been volatile or broken up too much. So that's why, in my opinion, I just think it's still percolating. And I personally believe there's still an opportunity here. But you can see back 2020, 9.3 billion. Then we're up to 9.5 billion, 10.6 billion, 11.4 billion. Closed out last year a little over 11.5 billion, right? But still, technically, positive, right? You see that net margin, about 4.8%. So they brought in about 550 million net income. Add that up, that's 12 billion, right? Check the numbers. We got debt, 3.5 billion, about 800 million cash on hand. Look at that dividend just climbing steadily year over year over year, up to 5.25 right now for 2024. The debt recently jumped up a little bit from 2.8 to about 3.5 billion. In my opinion, not a big deal. Cash on hand, again, 800 mil. So if we subtract cash from that negative debt, we'll be left with minus 2.7 billion roughly. Assets outweighing liabilities in both the short and the long term. Switch over to the balance sheet. We can see equity consistently growing from mid 3.5 billion range to the high threes, up into the fours. Last couple of quarters, 418, 42. Last quarter, 4.67 billion total equity. Book value per share steadily climbing up from sub 90 up into the 90s, getting right over 100. And now for last quarter, 119.25. 119.25. So even after a 15-point jump today off of the Goldman news, you're still trading less than 2x book value, which could be viewed, again, as a fundamental to show that the stock is potentially undervalued, right? But we had, what, minus 2.7 roughly from the debt. Equities roughly 4.7, so that would leave us with positive 2 billion. And then we said the revenue and the profits was about 12 billion, right? So technically, in my opinion, that puts quote unquote fair value of the HII business at roughly $14 billion. Current market cap, sub 8.5 billion. And we just jumped 7.5%, right? So if we looked at this a couple of days ago, I probably would have liked it even more. So my apologies again that I'm coming in late with this, but 8.5 billion, I believe there is a lot of room to the upside here. Again, if we're talking about a 50% move, would be 4.25 billion, would bring us to about 12.75 billion. Fair value, again, in my opinion, 14 billion, right? So we'd still be below fair value. That would bring us to 325 a share, and we technically didn't even really break up and break out yet. And again, that's technically being conservative. I'm being conservative, right? You guys out there, well, not you guys, a bunch of people on the bullish side, we saw the recent market pullbacks. What were a bunch of people saying, right? Buy the dip. I know it sucks here in the short term. He said it was going to get worse before it got better. But, over the next year or two, the policies are going to pay off. So anything you're buying now, you have a good chance for it to be up nicely over the next 12, 24 months. And honestly, they're probably going to turn out to be correct. As we always say, I know we like to pinpoint our pricing and timing, right? The best possible entry. But if markets do, let's just say, right, we turn around in a year or so, Dow's up to 50,000, NASDAQ hitting highs, right, S&P following suit. If we're just going to continue that surge up and up and up, And now we're just taking a little pause here for a couple of months while Trump, tries to do some deals, use some leverage here and there, right? Piss some people off, but then make some people happy down the road, right? Because you and I both know he's a businessman, right? And regardless of how much people want to, talk crap about him or talk about the businesses that went bankrupt, I mean, we have to be honest here. I'm sure if you made a couple of $1 billion off of real estate or off of, operating businesses, you get to that point where you're just throwing money around, right? And so that's what it kind of seemed like Trump was doing. He was just throwing money around almost into like every industry and just seeing, where he could be successful and which ones you keep, which ones you get rid of, kind of, right? I'm sure you can talk to small business owners out there, people who might have started their own, like silk screening business or something, t-shirt printing or something, and it just didn't work out. Someone invented a little doohickey, a little widget, but it never really took off. The sales never came in, so it went belly up, right? So we know this. So the point is, right? The point is, we know that people with wealth, they understand money, right? And they speak their own language to each other, especially when you're on a level of, world leaders and whatnot talking to each other. So I'm telling you right now, I'm sure anyone he's pissed off, whether it's China, anyone else, I'm sure anyone he's pissed off who probably feels like right now they're getting the short end of the stick, in my opinion, I do believe inside of the next 1 to 2 years, I do think it's all going to pay off. I really do. I truly believe that. I believe in my president, believe in my country. But also, again, billions from Apple reinvesting into America. I'm sure it's going to pay off for them, right? I'm sure it's not completely a bad thing, and I'm sure they're doing it for a reason. I'm sure it's going to help a lot of people, including Apple. Same thing with the foreign companies, right? Taiwan Semiconductor, bringing the investment over here and now, building a facility here, trying to, get out of those tariffs and whatnot. In my opinion, helping to secure protection from China. But I'm telling you, right now, it's like, is Trump screwing us? I don't know. This seems like a rough deal. And I do believe in the next couple of years, I think it's going to pay off pretty much for all parties across the board. So anyway, the point of all of that massive tangent, was that even though, again, we're getting some rocky updates and Trump is kind of swinging the market here, I do believe it'll all work itself out. But something like HII, again, I do like in the numbers we're talking, as I said, 14 billion fair value, 8.5 billion market cap. You're getting a dividend to own it while you hold it. Getting that dividend paid. 20 times cash flow. That's been moving up. Yeah, the cash flow's been decreasing and staying down, obviously, because the margins have been dropping. But again, the stock hasn't really exploded too much. Even back here, you can see, 2.33 up to 2.5 times book, 2.8. Now we're down 1.5 or 1.7 times book. Enterprise value, again, technically, what another business would be willing to pay for this business is sitting currently at over 11 billion. Again, current market cap, 8.5 billion. Return on assets, 4.5, yeah, okay. Return on equity, these have all dipped down the last couple of quarters. Gross margin was up to the mid-teens, it looks like. Now we're down to 10.7. But again, these deals are consistently coming in, and that's why now if there's going to be the big deal, the cherry on top to come in for new orders of ships for the Navy, then again, I think margins will increase. And also remember what that Goldman analyst said, right? Using the, the interface, what they say, AI, SAWS or whatever, right, is going to improve their margins. So we could potentially, this could be as bad as it gets. You know what I mean? And that now over the next couple of quarters, you're going to start to see these fundamentals climb back up to where they were, or maybe even higher. So again, right now, we know markets could swing, and this stock, after running up, could drop back down to 200, sub 200, right? So if you bought right now, you could, of course, immediately take a hit on a market sell-off. But over the long term, I do think this stock is positioned nicely here at this price. Operating margin, right? It's not all bad. Operating margin 2 quarters ago was 2.5%. Last quarter almost got it back up to 3%, right? So some of it's holding, right? EBITDA, again, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization, was 5.5%. Last quarter, 5.7%. Net margin was 3.7%. Last quarter, they got it back above 4%. So, in my opinion, I'm sure it'll probably all be fine. Yeah, debt ratios down technically over time, up from last quarter. I like it. I like it. And again, the EPS just recently here with a couple of misses. Before that was rock solid. And the revenue, again, it's funny. I always bring up the Boeing story when I was a broker, and I would mention to you guys that Boeing would come out with a rough quarter, or, they'd slightly miss, or report just in line maybe, but the stock would continue to climb. And it was the backlog, right? The billions and billions of dollars that they had in backlog orders of secured business, right? That's why it continued to stay up and it continued to hold its value. That's why, again, something like Huntington here, even if we come in light here on Q1, I really don't believe Wall Street could beat them up too much because, again, we just rolled through the news and we got a contract from this one, a contract from that one, a 10-year contract with the National Guard, right? Training their people. So that's why, again, technically, you could have little, ebbs and flows from quarter to quarter, but overall, the growth is there, the consistency is there. And yeah, let's look at the chart. So you can see, look at that, right? Came out of the gate like a freaking animal. 2011 jumps up, drops into October, and then didn't stop for, 7 straight years? Which is just ridiculous, right? Then you have a slight dip down here in 2019. We bounce right back, made a slightly higher high. These were, this was like lockdowns. And then we kind of, right? But you can see, again, technically we're swinging hard, right? From like mid 100 to as high as 300. So technically we're swinging hard. But you can see for the most part, you know what I'm saying? For the most part, we're just kind of in this sideways channel. And again, here you can see a top out. This was first week of March. So about 1 year ago, first week of March, 2024, top left of the screen there, you can see high 299.5, right? So the stock was on its way to 300, started to pull back, had the big drop there, tail end of 24. Obviously, recent tariff news brought the stock down, and again, we bounced, and we've been slowly climbing ever since. So even if it gets back to where it was, you're looking at a 250 plus, right? This trend line here, even if it climbs back up here and rejects, in the short term, you can see this stock run straight up to 260, in my opinion. Well, check the RSIs and whatnot, but you understand my point. Also, I love doing my array, right? I went from that low there, October 2011, low of 2262, and I just drew up these trend lines here again, going to that bottom right there, September 2020. Went to, looks like that bottom right there, September 25th, 2023. Came across to the bottom of that body there on the big drop, the big red candle, end of October 24. And I drew up to that recent bottom that hit there on the pullback in February, and then we bounced up. So technically you can see, right, we came down. This was just a random trend line I just drew out too to show the channel, but you can see that's almost exactly where the stock dropped to. And then we bounced back up and got above this trend line here. So that's why, again, even if we just retrace to where we were, you're looking at 250 to 260. So I appreciate Goldman increasing the price target to 235 or whatever it was. But as I said, that is extremely conservative, in my opinion, especially for this situation in general. And of course, what could potentially be coming in the news updates over the next 6-12 months. And again, this was like top line resistance, I guess we can call it. So if we climb right back up there, you're looking at almost 290. And technically, in my eyes, we should slowly like break up and get to that trend line there, which you can see is about 350. Which would be, 140, which would be like 2/3, right? A 2/3 move. We'll call it 6 billion. We'll round up to make my life simple. And that'll bring us to about 14.5 billion market cap. which if you remember, my personal fair value on the business is about $14 billion. So my personal price target on this stock, $350. $350. And again, you guys out there who have a little bit of size, you know, I'm sure this is something that might be a little bit more up your alley. Again, just remember, we did have the pullback and, you know, markets spiked up. We recently got the mention of shipbuilding from Trump, right? So if you see a little bit of a climb and then it cools off again, in my opinion, I wouldn't get too worried. And, you know, just remember the overall analysis here. But again, this is just my opinion, you know. Some of you out there might say, no, I don't like HII. I think, you know, General Dynamics is the better play. All right, fine. Fair enough. Again, another steady, stable grower, right? I mentioned it in my Trump video, said I liked it. On the up and up. We saw, you know, a couple of news updates from them as well. HII with its kick-ass website here. We got the submarine. Look at that. Beautiful. Beautiful. We're up in the air. We're in the sea. Ingalls Shipbuilding, Newport News Shipbuilding. Space, air, land, sea. And again, we're developing the technology, we're building it, and apparently we're also signing contracts to train individuals on how to use it as well. 11.5 billion, we looked at that. 138-year history. I just want to see if they mention anything. Yeah, they re-mentioned that Hyundai deal. So, in my opinion, I like it. In my opinion, I like it. And again, recently, it's been on the move. So you can see here, we jumped right up to the top Bollinger Band here, just about 217. Stock hit almost 219 and pulled back here. But you can see even the RSI, look, approaching almost 70 now, just over the last couple of days here on this climb. So you could potentially run into the 200-day at about 220, and then you might have a rejection. You might pull back mid-Bollinger Band of about 200, right? You understand what I mean? So that's why I like it, but at the same time, it could go lower. So I just want you to understand what we're dealing with here. But the good news is on this spike up, we are potentially ready to cross on the MACD to the upside. So that's why, again, you might see the run up, you know, it might just run up right to the trend line or even back to where it was, as I said, maybe 250, 260, and then it just pulls back and rejects immediately. So, you know, you got to take this one day by day, of course, but overall, again, in my opinion, I do like it. And in the numbers, I do believe it gets back to around those 300 previous highs, and I do think it has the ability to break through up and above 300 plus, especially, again, stock's kind of been on hold for 7 years. And now we have a president talking about, oh, we got to bring back shipbuilding, right? So that's why I think we ran it up for a while. We kind of suppressed it. It's hanging out. And now it's potentially ready. Right? We're up. We consolidate. We pause. We're up. We consolidate. We pause. We're up. You understand? That's what I think anyway. But MACD potentially ready to cross to the upside. Could run into that 220 resistance. Again, RSI approaching 65 on the daily. So it's up recently, but it's not too up. RSI on the weekly time frame now, right? Because we recently pulled it back and we started just bouncing it the last couple of weeks. You can see RSI on the weekly, middle of the road here at 55. And you also have the 50-day moving average on the weekly here, 223.43. So you might see another bump up there to the 220s range. The daily RSI will top out at 70 plus, right? It'll start pulling back a little bit, probably back to this 200-day moving average. Then they could bounce it, right? Because over the weekly time frame, it's still on the up and up. But technically, this week's move, especially today's pop, 7%, gets the stock above the 200-day moving average, as you see here, 213.22. Stock closed 215.74. That is technically bullish. We'll check the pivot points. I'll let you go. We could check the short interest also. I really don't think it's a heavily shorted stock, though. I seriously doubt it. You don't, like I said, looking at the consistency of the contracts coming in, look at those fundamentals we just laid out. You know, a stock like this is really not one you bet against, in my opinion. Short float 3.5%. right? So this is one, again, the traders, of course, they can pick their spots, track, the RSI, play the sell-offs, but again, this seems like one you're not really betting against overall. There's a little swing, but yeah, short float 3.5%. And look at this, we also have a pivot point right here at 220.96. Resistance 1, slightly above the 200 day by about 30 cents, right? So you're going to have a lot of action right there, 220, 221. We have to see if the MACD cross can help push and break up above that. And you can see the next resistance level about 238, right? So if we do happen to climb up again and stay bullish, then next stop should technically be the 240s, the 250s, the 260s. But again, you're going to have to keep an eye on that RSI. On the weekly, pivot point 220.18. You want to talk about a lot of action diverging into one price level, right? We're talking a lot of action here about 220, 221. And of course, then we have the 50-day moving average here, 223. So we have a lot of action over the next couple of points. So that's why he recently talked about it. Goldman came out with the positive report. The stock popped today. We're on the up and up. A lot of people probably jumped in now, right? So in my opinion, they're going to give it a little bit more bump, and then they're probably going to reject it off the 220s range. I do think that. So got to keep an eye on that. But yeah, MACD recently crossed to the upside as well. Looks like when March started, and we've that was like right here, and we've kind of been on the up and up for the most part. And again, I know people were saying, the tariffs are going to bring the market down. And again, I said in my opinion that we were up so much over the last couple of years. I mean, you could pick any reason as to why we can bring markets down if you really think about it. But it does sound like with the updates coming out of the cabinet, I know they all spoke the other day. It does sound like, they mentioned that there were a lot of countries that came to the table when hearing about the tariff news, and they were, they wanted to discuss some deals. They wanted to lower their tariffs, or they wanted to, make the investment into the United States to start building here, producing here. So that's why, as bad as it was, in the end, I think it'll all work out. But again, it really seems like the biggest issue is China at the moment. Because again, as we've been reading, it sounds like a lot of other countries, like I said, they're doing deals, they're making investments here. So everyone kind of is still on the same page right now, except for China. So, we could remain rocky maybe for the next couple of weeks until this is all settled. But in my opinion, I think it'll all work itself out. But that's pretty much it. Again, I saw the undervalued numbers, in my opinion, on something like HII, and we recently, again, got the Trump mention of shipbuilding. So, yeah, jumped on, figured I'd make a little video and just kind of speak about this one, just so, it's on your radar, or you can put it on your watch list for now, whatever you want to do. But that's it. I'll end it there. Once again, stocks by the numbers. I want to thank you for stopping by. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, drop it down in the comment section. I'm usually pretty quick to reply. Thumbs up algorithm helps me get more eyes on the channel. And of course, subscribe to the channel. That is our handshake agreement. That is how you help me help you. But more importantly, moving forward, like I always say, I understand that markets are rocky, they're volatile, they're very uncertain. So I want to wish all of you success. I hope everyone makes a couple of dollars. Thank you for your time. Have a great weekend.